When a pump is leaking as much as this one is, you know that something's wrong. If tightening the gland follower doesn't help and water keeps pouring out of the gland, the pump probably needs repacking. The first step in repacking is to have the pump shut down and tagged out. Next, get together all the tools you'll need and take them with you to the work site. To make loosening the gland follower bolts easier, spray the bolts with penetrating oil. The oil will dissolve any rust or corrosion that has built up. Then use a wrench to loosen the bolts and back them off far enough so you can swing them out of the way. You can now remove the gland follower itself. Pull it back toward you until it's free of the stuffing box. Then separate and remove the two halves. A packing puller makes removing old packing material a lot easier. Notice that the tip of the packing puller is shaped like a corkscrew. Turning the handle will drive the corkscrew tip into the packing. Then, when you pull it toward you, the packing will come with it. Remove the packing and set it aside. Repeat this procedure for each ring of packing outboard of the lantern ring. Be careful not to pull too hard, or you may rip the packing and complicate the job of getting it out of the stuffing box. When you can feel that there's no more packing in front of the lantern ring, use one or more pieces of stiff wire with a hook on one end to remove the lantern ring from the stuffing box. Reach into the stuffing box with the wires and insert the hooks into the holes in the sides of the ring. It might take a few tries. But once you get the lantern ring hooked, you can carefully work it toward you. With a little coaxing, the ring will eventually slide out of the stuffing box. When it's free, pull the ring back out of the way against the flinger and the bearing housing. With the lantern ring out of the way, the rest of the packing will be exposed. Remove it using the packing puller as we saw before. Again, be careful not to tear the packing. When the last ring of old packing has been removed, use a flashlight to be sure you've gotten all traces of packing material out of the stuffing box. Then, wipe the shaft to remove any dirt or excess water. This is important because the next step is to determine the size of the new packing you need. Measuring the distance from the shaft to the edge of the casing will tell you what diameter of new packing you need. A second important measurement to take is the diameter of the shaft. This will tell you what size mandrel you need to cut the new packing. Write down both measurements, the distance between the shaft and the casing, and the diameter of the shaft. One easy method for accurately cutting new packing rings is to use a mandrel, a length of old shaft or piping whose diameter is the same as that of the pump shaft that you just measured. It's also important that you measure the new packing to be sure it will fit perfectly into the space between the casing and the shaft. Use only the type of packing recommended by the manufacturer. Using one of the old rings of packing as a guide, measure off how much new packing to cut from the spool. If you've removed 5 old rings from the pump, as we have here, be sure to measure a length of packing at least equal to the length of 5 rings. It helps to give yourself a little extra. Lay the packing across a wooden block and cut off the measured length. The wood provides a soft cutting surface that won't damage the blade. Start wrapping the length of new packing around the mandrel. Wrap it around once for each ring of packing you need. In our case, we need 5 rings, although remember, a little extra is a lot better than not enough. Keep the packing fairly tight as you're wrapping. Then, when you've formed the number of rings you need, tighten the packing around the mandrel once more and make a single cut through all the rings. Cut straight down. This ensures that the ends of each ring will fit evenly against each other inside the stuffing box. With the new rings cut, you can begin the actual repacking procedure. First, lubricate the shaft. This will help the packing rings slide smoothly into the stuffing box. Also, lubricate the inside and outside diameter of the packing ring. Then slide this first packing ring into the stuffing box. Do the same for the second ring. Lubricate on both sides. This lubrication will prevent excessive wear during the break-in period. When the ring has been lubricated, slide it into the stuffing box. One thing to remember here, always stagger the open ends of the rings like this, at 90-degree angles to one another. This breaks up the flow path of the leak-off. If you arrange the open ends in a straight line, you give the sealing water an easy path, and the gland will end up leaking too much. When the first rings of packing are in position and properly staggered, lubricate the outside of the lantern ring. Then slide it as far as you can into the stuffing box. You can now lubricate and install the remaining new packing rings outboard of the lantern ring. When the last ring is in position, reassemble the gland follower on the shaft. When you have both halves fitted together, use the follower to push the packing rings and the lantern ring into the stuffing box. Then swing the gland follower bolts into position, fastening the gland follower in place. Now tighten the bolts enough to press the packing and the lantern ring firmly into the stuffing box. Don't over-tighten these bolts, however. The gland follower must be loose enough to allow water to flow through the gland and lubricate the new packing. When the gland follower is in place, open the valve on the gland sealing line. This will allow water to flood the stuffing box. This leak-off is an indication that the lantern ring lines up correctly with the gland sealing line. After allowing a few minutes for the water to thoroughly wet the new packing material, tighten the gland follower so that when the pump is turned on, the water won't spray all over you. Now you can have the pump turned on so you can make final adjustments to the gland follower. With the pump running, check the temperature of the stuffing box. If it feels not just warm but hot, loosen the gland follower and increase the leak-off until the stuffing box cools off. Adjusting the gland follower is the real art of packing a pump. You don't want the leak-off to be excessive, but at the same time, you can't have the new packing heating up and damaging the shaft. As a result, it will probably take you several tries over a long period of time to get the gland follower properly adjusted and the new packing properly broken in. When you finally have the gland follower adjusted so that the leak-off rate and the temperature of the stuffing box are holding steady, have your supervisor, or whoever is designated by your plant's policy, inspect the job. His okay completes the job. That covers the basic procedure for repacking a centrifugal pump.